Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head to the Åland Islands once again. This is my fourth visit there on the channel, and of course it's a small Swedish speaking archipelago at the southwest corner of Finland. Meant to be a very beautiful part of the world, and I really do need to go and visit it. But for this one we are going to do my fourth review from Stallhagen, the only craft brewery so far on the island, and we're going to have a taste of their historic beer, the 1843. This of course is the beer that really made the brewery quite famous. This is the one that washed up on the shores and then they went into the Shipwreck, fished out a few more bottles and then replicated it. So it should be very, very cool. I'm actually filming this beer review for you on the 18th of March 2016. And as of this point in time, this beer is actually retired. They've only brewed 2 batches of it. There was the original batch, which was limited to 2,000 bottles, and then there was this one, the second batch. There was 2 beers in that, the 1842 and the 1843, as far as I can remember, and this one is from that second batch. But I think there was 12,000 bottles of this one, so it is a very, very exclusive beer, and I feel very privileged to be able to review it for you. So a huge thank you to Ola Brandborn, who very kindly sent me this bottle. He's from the Stockholm area of Sweden, but he travels a lot to the Åland Islands for his work, and he very kindly sent me this bottle along with 2 others that you've seen me review before, the Baltic Porter and the Ceremony. So a huge thank you to Ola for sending me this beer and for supporting the channel. I really hope you enjoy the reviews, and really very much thank you for sending me this beer. Very cool, probably the most exclusive one I've reviewed for you on the channel so far. But anyway, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. I'll also tell you a bit about the process that went into making this beer as well, because it's quite interesting actually. But there's all the usual social media links in the description below. Do check those out. There's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews from Stallhagen. Please check those out too. And if you want to see more beer reviews, do subscribe to the channel. But if you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward a little bit. But in the meantime, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery and the beer itself. So as I've told you many a time, Stallhagen are the only brewery so far on the Åland Islands, which is an autonomous Swedish-speaking region of Finland. It's a small island archipelago just off the southwest corner of Finland. Meant to be a very beautiful part of the world, so somewhere that I really do need to go and visit actually. There's quite an interesting history behind the Åland Islands, so do check out my other Stallhagen reviews and you'll hear me talk about that. But Stallhagen themselves were founded back in 2004 by a group of beer enthusiasts, and the brewery now have over 1,600 shareholders, and they're based in Grälsby, or Gräsleby I guess you would say, which is 18 kilometres from the capital city of Mariehamn, and it's actually the only craft brewery so far on the islands, but I have heard there are 2 other craft breweries looking to open up very, very shortly. But the current CEO of Stallhagen is Jan Wenström, and the brewmaster is Mette Ekholm, who has been with the company since 2008, and he trained at the Scandinavian School of Brewing in Copenhagen, and he says that he likes to stick to using malts, hops, water and yeast in his beers. So he's quite a traditionalist. It sounds as if he likes to kind of stick to the German purity law, the Reinheitsgebot of 1516, of course the oldest food law in the world, but he produces some pretty damn awesome beers. So just to list the other Stallhagen ones that you can get, there's the Stallhagen Tre, there's the Delicat, the Honey Beer, the Paleo, the US Red Ale and the Baltic Porter. The latter 2 you've seen me review on the channel before, and they are pretty nice beers, so I would recommend that you check them out. The Baltic Porter, of course, I think is the highest rated beer according to Rate Beer, so I would recommend that you check out that one, especially if you enjoy porter beers. But to tell you about this beer itself, in addition of course to those ones I mentioned to you, they do have some special and seasonal beers, and of course this is one of the very special ones. So this beer actually washed up on the shore of the Åland Islands in 2010 in a crate filled with beers and champagne, and later that year they actually located the Shipwreck, and they did a dive to recover some of the bottles of beer from the Shipwreck, and the beer was researched and then basically replicated by the VTT Technical Research Centre on Finland, and now Stallhagen produces the beer at their brewery, and all proceeds from the production of this beer, from what I understand, went to charity. But basically this was quite interesting. The fact that the beer was in glass bottles, especially when you consider that it's from 1843, this meant that it was a very good beer, because normally at this time beer was kind of transported in wooden casks. But for the first 2,000, I think it was the first 2,000 bottles of this beer, they actually hand blew glass bottles and put it out in a special box, so it was really quite cool. But apparently one of the big difficulties with replicating this beer was the fact that yeast strains back in the 1840s were contaminated. They weren't pure, pure like they are today. So there was a lot of research went into this beer and kind of replicating different bacteria that went into the beer along with the yeast strain. So that was what really meant that they had to put in quite a lot of back-breaking work to actually get this beer as close to what they could. They tried it a lot and they managed to find the right track quite quickly from what they were to go down with these yeast and bacteria, and they developed it, and it turned out quite well apparently, and it's proved to be very, very popular. And this actual batch of beer was launched in summer in 2014. It was launched locally and it sold out like that apparently. So I don't know how Ola managed to actually get me this bottle, if it was quite easy for him or if he had one saved. But regardless, a huge thank you to Ola for sending me this beer. It is quite an exclusive one and I feel very privileged to review this one on the channel for you. So like I told you at the start of the video, this one is a 4.5% traditional ale. On the back it says Stallhagen 1843 is a replica beer from the early 1800s, spontaneously fermented using a unique composition of malt, wheat and microorganisms. This beer is golden yellow and has almost none of the typical bitterness or hops aroma. The role of the hops in breweries 200 years ago was not as important as it is today. The beer's taste profile is similar to wine, with a distinct freshness and fruitiness together with subtle spiciness. Its aroma is fresh and acidic with flowery notes of fruit. It contains barley malt and wheat, and yeah, tells you a little bit about that on the back. So I'd just like you to have a little look at the artwork on this one. It says on the side, discover more about the autonomous Åland, visit Åland.com, and the historic shipwreck was found on the Baltic seabed in Åland's archipelago. So yeah, very, very local beer, this one. And in a way it's a kind of shame that it is a limited edition beer, but in that regard it is quite cool that I can review it for you on the channel here. As I said, there was 2 different batches of this beer that were brewed. There was the first one which came in a little box where they hand blew the bottles for it. You can see the top label there, 1843. I don't know if that first batch was actually the 1842 or if the 1842 was produced along with this one in the second batch, but regardless, it's a very, very cool beer. You can see the little blurb on the back there that I just read out to you too. And actually, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see this on the camera, but you can actually see the shape of the Åland Islands on the back of this label here. So I'll definitely be keeping this bottle because of just how exclusive this beer is. But without further ado then, let's get it open and we'll get on with the tasting here. I'm not sure if I actually will need to use a corkscrew on this one, so we'll try to open it just normally and see how we get on. Oh no, it will open. There we are. Yeah, so as you can see, a nice smoky opening on this one, and we'll get it out and into the glass. This is really cool actually. As a scientist myself, I'm a sort of chemical physicist, but leaning into the astronomy and physics side of things, it's really cool to actually see from when I studied chemistry something like this being produced. It's really quite special actually. The weight in this bottle as well is actually quite heavy. I'm not sure how many millilitres that was, 375. I thought this was actually maybe a 500 bottle. I never checked that before I started the video, but hey ho. But as you can see, this beer, it looks really nice. It's poured a nice hazy kind of yellowy amber colour actually. You can see there's a good frothy head on this one. It's a little bit less dense than some of the ones you're going to come across, but it looks very, very nice, very attractive looking beer. You can see there is a degree of transparency to it, but the beer does have some opacity as well. I'm talking in astronomy terms because I've been studying stellar atmospheres recently, but you can see the nice bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and there's quite a lot of carbonation visible just going up towards the bottom of that head there. It looks very, very nice. So let's give it a smell and see how we get on with this one. It smells a bit like a Belgian blonde. Not quite as yeasty or as caramelly, but it definitely has some of that doughy, yeasty character to it. It does smell somewhere between a Belgian blonde and a kind of lager beer actually. So there's some bready, doughy, yeasty character coming out of this one. You can smell the pale malt. It's definitely a pale malt note that comes out of this. When you sugar it up a bit more, you can pick out a little bit of the spice. There's maybe a bit of a kind of biscuity or slightly honeyish note in the malt base as well. But there's not really a hoppy character. Like they were saying, it's not a very hoppy beer at all actually, which is quite interesting. You can get a little bit of a kind of appley or sort of pear flavour out of this one. So yeah, or aroma I should say, not a flavour. But it smells really nice. It actually does smell, that the aroma on this one isn't too prominent. It's actually a very light and subtle aroma, but it smells somewhere between a little bit like a Belgian yeast strain and some sort of lager beer. That's kind of where it's coming in on the scale. Of course, this is like nothing you're ever going to try. When they said it was like wine, I was expecting it to be quite acidic and quite tart on the aroma. But it's not really. You do get some apples, you do get some pears. There's a little bit of a kind of grassy-ish note to it as well. But other than that, it's quite subtle in the nose. I'll just sugar it up again and see what we get. There's a little bit of spice in there too. You can notice that mixing in with the bready and doughy characters. But overall, it does smell quite nice. It smells like quite a refreshing sort of lager beer, to be honest with you. So yeah, take a little bit of time and smell the aroma of this one if you do get to try it. I'm not sure how likely it is that you'll be able to find this beer now, but if you do manage to try this, enjoy it, savour it, just take a little bit of time and appreciate what this beer is all about. There's a lot of work went into replicating this one, so it's probably one of the more scientific beers, or probably the most scientific beer I've reviewed for you on the channel so far. So do savour this one. But let's have a go of it now. So once again, a huge thank you to Ola Brandborn for sending me this beer. Much appreciated. This review is for you. I hope you enjoy it, but let's get stuck into this guy. This is the historic beer 1843, the Shipwreck beer from Stallhagen in the Åland Islands. Skål. It really is just a bit like a lager beer, to be honest. But it's a quite decent lager beer at that, I have to say. Yeah, when you try this beer, make sure you sugar it around your palate and just get a feel for everything that's going on in this one. The one thing it doesn't have actually on it is a bottle date. It would be quite interesting to know that. Because it said on the back that you can expect some sort of winey flavours from this one, so I was expecting it to be a little bit tart and quite sharp and things. And I mean, there are some kind of slightly green grape flavours in this one, or white wine vinous characters. There is a little bit of that sour tarty character, but for me, it really does lean more towards the malty side of things. It's quite bready and it's quite doughy, so in the middle of the palate, you're getting a very light kind of bready character that just blankets the middle of the tongue there. It goes right across it. You can feel some of the heavier kind of doughy notes just building on top of that. There's a little bit of a biscuity sweetness or slightly caramelish note in this beer as well. Yeah, you can taste a little bit of the spicy character in this one too. As you move into the aftertaste, you can feel some herbal character, almost a little bit like a hoppy herbal character coming out of this beer. But yeah, it's quite nice. It's quite simple in what it does, but it's really quite drinkable actually. It's a very nice drinkable. It's somewhere between a sort of more bready Belgian yeast. It doesn't quite have the same sort of syrupy and slightly more hoppy note as the Belgian beers. It's not quite as syrupy and quite as sweet as the Belgian beers, but it's like quite a big doughy, bready lager beer, this one. It's quite interesting. But around the edges of the palate, you can pick up the sort of appley and slightly peary esters. It's quite subtle actually, that. It's more a kind of grassiness that I'm getting out of this beer. It really does remind me of maybe a Helles beer, or a land beer, or Keller beer, or something like that from Germany. It's one of these more, it really does remind me of some of these Franconian beers, but it does have a little bit of the heavier yeast that you can associate with some of the Belgian beers. It's a beer within its own right. I shouldn't really try to compare it with styles, but if you don't get to try this beer, I just want to give you an idea of exactly how it kind of comes across. For me, it's somewhere between these slightly more Belgian-y, bready, yeasty beers. Not quite a wit beer. It doesn't have the same kind of banana notes in there, but it has the same feel from the yeast, but it has more of a flavour that you would associate with some of these Franconian land beers, the Zwickels, the Keller beers, these sort of things. But yeah, on top of that, you do get some slightly white winey grapey character. It's not tart and sharp in the way that some of these beers are. There is a little bit of the appley and peary esters coming out of this beer, But overall, it really is more about the malt. This one, it's like a nice, big, sort of bready, Zwickel Keller beer sort of thing you're getting from this one. There is a little bit of spicy character, maybe the kind of wheaty spiciness in the middle of the malt base there, so you can pick that up in the middle of your tongue. There's an element of herbal character to the more hoppy side of things around the edge of the palate. There's a bit of herbal character, but for me, it's a mix between sort of herbal and grassy hops in this one. But that said, it is quite a nice beer, and it's really quite interesting. There is maybe a little bit of floral character as well. But in terms of the body, it's definitely a light-bodied beer. There's no question about that. Maybe pushing the mid-bodied category slightly. In terms of a lighter, more sessionable beer, then it is definitely it's definitely a heavier, on the heavier side of sessionable. But overall on the scale, I'd say mid-bodied. The carbonation in it is actually quite active. It's got a good bit more carbonation than some of the beers you're going to come across. It's actually making me feel just a little bit gassy. Trying not to belch in my reviews. But yeah, it's got a good bit of active carbonation. It makes it quite crisp actually. That's probably what makes the beer feel a little bit lighter than it maybe is actually. But this one leans really quite towards the malty side of things. It's quite bready, like I say. There's a little bit of a slightly honeyish or kind of biscuity, syrupy sweetness in this one. Sort of grainy sweetness actually. The hoppy character is sort of herbal. There's a little bit of dryness around the front of the palate. Not the most dry beer I've come across, and certainly nowhere near as tart and as acidic as I was thinking. As I said, there are some apple and peary esters in this, a little bit of a kind of green grape note, but you know, overall, it's actually a pretty nice beer, so I would recommend you try it. I was surprised at how sessionable it was, and I mean, it is 4.5%. I was actually perhaps expecting something that was a bit heavier in alcohol. I didn't realise it before I actually started the review that it was only 4.5%. But you know, it's good, and it's a very unique beer, and I feel very privileged to have reviewed it for you. So I would recommend that if you do somehow come across this beer, give it a go, if for nothing else, for the novelty factor. It's very similar to, it reminds me a lot of these German kind of Keller, Zwickel, land beer sort of things that you get from Franconia, but it has a little bit more of a Belgian kind of yeasty quality about it. A little bit like a wit beer, but not the banana flavours, just a little bit of the kind of body and the slightly spicy character actually. And there is a little bit of this slightly kind of tart, sharper characters, but again, quite a subtle note. But overall, a really quite interesting beer, and I feel very privileged to have been able to review this one for you on the channel. So again, a huge thank you to Ola for sending me this beer. I hope you guys have enjoyed the review. If you have tried this beer for yourself, do let me know in the comments section below your own thoughts on this thing. For me, this is a beer that you would try for the novelty of it. In terms of the Stallhagen beers, the Baltic Porter and the US Red Ale are probably on the side of things. They probably are better beers than this. But it's a nice beer and it's unique, so that really is what makes you want to try this one. And like I said, I feel very privileged that I was able to review it when it is such a limited edition. But if you like lager beers, if you like German Keller beers, land beers, Zwickels, like I do, you will enjoy this beer and you will appreciate it. Those of you who are more into like hoppy beers or very malty beers and things, maybe this one isn't quite as complex as you would want, but for me, I've quite enjoyed it. So do check out this beer for yourself. Let me know your own thoughts on it in the comment section below. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews, and especially thank you to Ola Brandborn for sending me this beer. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Go and check out about the Åland Islands. They've got a very interesting history, and it's meant to be a very beautiful part of the world. I'll certainly go and visit it at some point when I have the time, but you guys should check out as well. So yeah, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, slàinte just now, and cheers to everybody watching in the Åland Islands. I'll catch you soon with another beer review. Hopefully I can return to Stallhagen and the other breweries that pop up from the Åland Islands in the near future. Cheers.